Die Fendt-Baureihe 700 Vario ist
The Fendt 700 Vario series has been by far the most important series in the Fendt range for many years. Over 100,000 units have been delivered to enthusiastic Fendt customers. Roland, when and where was the 700 series first presented?
It was 1998 when we first presented the 700 series. Actually, it was only the 714 and 716 models at the legendary Fendt Field Day in Wadenbrunn. As we claimed, it was a must-attend event for all future farmers.
And before that, I remember that it was also presented to the press. Profi was the first editorial team to get up close and personal with the vehicle.
Yes, I think that was the first time the two of us encountered the press together, Sepp. I remember that it was together with Profi, the legendary photographer Tobonik, and editor-in-chief Manfred Neuneber, where we handed over a 716 to the gentleman for the first time near Kassel, and the press response was correspondingly positive even back then.
What were the technical highlights?
Well, the truly new features that were unique to Fendt and also in the industry were suckered. I'll start with the design, where we introduced a cast half-frame, flanged to the rear of the transmission, with the front axle suspension highly integrated, and built on top of that a Deutz engine, which was new at Fendt at the time, with four-valve technology, a continuously variable transmission, and of course the matching rear axle. That was the drivetrain. But above all, in terms of the interface, i.e. the driver's workplace, I think what was really revolutionary was that we had the confidence to operate a tractor with a joystick, and for the first time, a multifunction joystick, the Variotronic on the right-hand side, the fully integrated control panel, and a terminal as standard. That was quite a sensation at the time and attracted a lot of attention.
And the design was completely new too?
Absolutely. I remember when I first saw the tractor back then, and I'm sure many Fendt customers felt the same way. The striking angular design of the 500 and 800 series, then the sleek design of the 700 series was just as revolutionary.
But not everyone took to it right away.
Sepp, you know how it is. If you want to be really good, you have to polarize. And I think back then, we polarized extremely, both in terms of inner values, vehicle structures, and design. But as we all know today, and in hindsight, you're always either certain or uncertain. But in this case, success came, and probably much more than anyone in Mark Toberdorf could have imagined at the time.
Market success really did come. Unit sales and orders rose significantly. So what happened next in terms of models?
Well, before we get to the new models, it's important to mention that Fendt's switch to the 150 horsepower class from the 500 Favorit, which was certainly a very popular model, meant that we were so confident, without any setbacks, because we no longer had engines from MAN, to rely completely on the new concept, which was a business risk on the one hand, and above all, the price position that we naturally took at the time. That was a very strong benchmark, which still shapes us to this day. But development has continued, of course. In 1998, as I said, the initial presentation. In 1999, my first AGRITECHNICA was then the launch with 4 models. Then you have the entire series for the first time. 711, 712, 714, 716. That was the first significant expansion in 1999, which was also necessary because the 500 series had completely disappeared and we needed a replacement for the entire 500 series.
So that was the start of the 700 Vario series, and then it continued step by step and stage by stage with technology and so on and so forth. How did things really progress from there?
Right from the start, we were faced with a bit of a challenge, because the drive technology was, so to speak, just the foundation. And of course, there were many, many more ideas in Marktoberdorf about what could be built on top of it. And then in 2003, we introduced the TMS system, the tractor management system, for the first time. The Variotronic TI headland management system was another milestone that brought significant advantages and increased comfort, especially at the headland. 2006 was the next important milestone. So that's where we went. We installed a larger front axle, raised the entire vehicle by 70 millimeters, and created more space for ventilation and cooling so that more power could be delivered. Those were the next 2 or 3 steps.
And in terms of models, when did you move on to the 724?
That was probably in 2006. If I remember correctly, that was when we made the big change to the design, which is still recognizable today in terms of its basic structure. The cabin was already getting on in years at that point. And here, for the first time, we came up with a completely new cabin design. I think it was long overdue, but the point we made with it was certainly a major milestone. And then, of course, there was the upward expansion of performance. We then introduced the 714 to 724. And as we all know today, the 724 is of course a success story, not only for the Fendt brand, but also because a single model was able to position itself so successfully over such a long period of time. Not only in Germany, but above all in our home market. That fills us with great pride.
And did it win all the awards there were to be won?
Absolutely. We always worked well together, and we won everything there was to win. And last but not least, I would say that we don't pursue technological progress for the sake of technological progress, nor for the sake of awards, which we are happy to accept, but to put our customers in a leading position in terms of the work they have to do and in terms of costs. And I believe that the 700 series can rightly claim this for itself.
Which customer segment was the 700 series aimed at?
Well, looking back over the long term, I would say that the average power we sell and deliver has grown significantly over the last 20 years, I would say. Back then, the classic contractor was still working with between 150 and 200 horsepower. We have long since left that behind us, but I believe that with the 700, we have managed to repeatedly shape entire performance segments and be the first to occupy this position. And that has been the case from the beginning to the present day. Today, I would almost say that the 724 is the bread and butter tractor for contractors, and very often also the first machine on larger farms, whether they are mainly involved in arable farming, mixed farming, or due to its low power-to-weight ratio, grassland farming. It is always suitable everywhere.
It has also impressed many customers in the export market. Which export markets were particularly interesting?
So it's been like this for years. The techno markets, where farmers are waiting for technology, are practically demanding it from us, with Germany always at the forefront, followed by Benelux, for example, then Switzerland, Austria, and it was the same here. And I would say that in the south, in western Spain and Italy, it usually takes a little longer for the demand to really come, as we need it. And today, I would say that the large radius of action that we have also opened up for ourselves with the 700 series is Central Europe. I can start in the far north of Poland and work my way down to Bulgaria and Romania, where the 700 series is now also an established model range.
Now we have to talk about the brand new technology, the latest models of the 700 Vario. What is the technology behind it? What else has changed?
Yes, we are now talking about the 7th generation, so we have moved on quickly. But the 7th generation is, of course, once again the best 700 series we have ever built, and has been on the market for several years in the 7.0 version. That was in September 2022. when it was also presented for the first time in Wadenbrunn to the dealers at this location. So the 7.1 version is coming to AGRITECHNICA, where we are once again going to present this intelligent multi-performance concept, i.e., rated power plus maximum power. And if the conditions are right, extra power can be mobilized. This will be an extra 20 HP for all models from AGRITECHNICA 2025 onwards, from the smallest to the largest model, which will give this series another very good boost, so that we also have a chance with the smaller models to get customers even more excited about the series. I would say that back then, we laid the foundation for this with the 700, which then gave rise to the 800. This was made possible by the 70mm hood head on the entire vehicle, because that was the basis on which we launched the 718, and the 800 was then developed from that offshoot.
The 700 Vario series has always been extremely practical for contractors and customers due to its power-to-weight ratio. How does that work in practice?
Power-to-weight ratio has been a key discipline for years, and we pay extremely close attention to it in our design work, as light as possible, and covering everything that professional contractors expect from us in terms of registration reserves. So if you look at the first generation, you have a gross vehicle weight of 11 tons. That was an excellent leading value for 1998 and 1999. Today, we have reached a gross vehicle weight of over 14 tons. That is perhaps one of the factors that is decisive for practitioners here. And the payload? Correspondingly higher. Of course higher, because the equipment combinations are larger. But perhaps you can't evaluate such a parameter on its own. Of course, the appropriate tires are always part of it. If I take a look there, the initial specification was 650, 65 R38. Today we drive with 710, 65 R42 as standard for the top engine version. So that's 10 to 15 centimeters in the tire diameter. It's always the total package that we have adapted to the requirements there over the years.
And one important argument in favor of Fendt has always been its stable reselling value. How does that apply to this 700 series?
Indeed, this has always been a huge advantage of Fendt tractors. Anyone who has a 700 series here, regardless of whether it's from the first generation, and especially if they have a vehicle in good condition, will probably get back the money they paid for it at the end of the 1990s. It's extraordinary when you consider that a 724 has been the best-selling tractor in Germany for over 10 years in a row, and this has not led to any erosion in the value of used machines. On the contrary, it's just fantastic to see, from a total cost of ownership perspective, that a 700 is still a super interesting investment for farmers or contractors.
Wonderful. Yes, Roland, you could say that the 700 was actually your entry point at Fendt as a young engineer.
You could say that. The 700 series hadn't been unveiled yet when I had my first interview, and that was exactly 26 years ago. It was in July 1998, when I had my first interview with Andreas Lovell in Marktoberdorf. And after the interview, he took me behind the buildings and secretly showed me the 700 for the first time. And that was my first customer reaction. I grew up on a farm and so on. It was revolutionary for me to say, what am I doing here at Fendt? And I climbed into a cab for the first time. A terminal, a joystick. It was a whole new world. And then, of course, I was incredibly lucky and also had some mentors at Fendt at the time. And when I started as product marketing manager for the 700 Vario, I had drawn the lucky ticket for my professional future.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Late, but still appropriate.